So, pranam to all. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And today we have a surprise visit for me, for maybe for you. It was not in the agenda, but by the invitation of the Vaishnavas and the rope of their affection, we were celebrating recently Sri Damodar. So it speaks a lot about being tied by the rope, being tied and being carried here and there by the rope of Vaishnav's will and affection. So that invitation, I'm trapped here for a week. Words like continuation logically in the opposite direction, but somehow it came like that. Spoke of Mahaprabhu's pastimes in Jagannath Puri, the time of Rath Yatra, so kind of we connected the celebration in that line. So we spoke for a week, a saptaha, on Lila, Puri Lila, and now we want to complement that by sharing some thoughts these coming 6 days or something. Last time, Sri Navadvipa, which again, although in the chronological unfolding or of the earthly lila. Navadvipa lila comes first, Jagannath Puri comes after. Somehow we can speak in cyclical terms, and one takes to another. And in terms of our ultimate prospect, we want to enter into the Navadvipa lila in Nitya Navadvipa with Mahaprabhu. So the Jagannath Puri lila is doorway towards that lila for us. So it's a good way also to conceive that. So I'll be speaking on that for 6 days approx. Also, we'll have some in between, some questions and answers some days in the morning. You know better than me which are those days and timings. So, but today we will begin with the Navadvipa Lila series. So we will be speaking about that 6 days. Generally, I will have liked to speak on 7 days because just the format of the Saptaha, but well, there's no 7 days. I have to continue traveling. So we'll do it in 6 days. So it will be a little condensed. So also hope you are prepared for some extension in the lectures. Hope you have time. And if there are questions, maybe we may address them mostly in the morning meetings when we have Istagosti. So today I'd like to speak more about like an introduction, which is not at all introductory, because to speak about Gaur Lila is not an introductory topic to begin with, but somehow we have to make some introduction to a non-introductory reality, something like this. It's paradoxical, but we have to. So of course, again, the very purpose of this is for us as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, as members of the Gaudiya Sampradaya, to gain more acquaintance with who is our Istadev, who is our worshipable deity as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, and that worshipable deity is the one that it's now in our altar here, with Sriman Mahaprabhu, Ki Jai. So he's in one sense the most important figure and the most refined and upgraded version of the Absolute, if you will. And today in this so-called introductory talk, we will share this non-introductory topic, hopefully some introduction, some foundation to who is Mahaprabhu, what's Gaur Lila. And of course, when one narrating Mahaprabhu Lila, Lila means loving interaction between Bhagavan and his devotee. So immediately we have to speak about Mahaprabhu's devotees as well, which in one sense we could say they are more important than Mahaprabhu in one sense, because they represent an embodied figure form of love for Mahaprabhu, which personifies the goal we want to attain. We want ourselves to become a personification of a particular type of love for Mahaprabhu. So embodied figures are there in the Lila for us to have a role model to follow. So that's we want. It's not just let's go get together and hear some funny stories or something, but let's commit ourselves more deeply by witnessing the loving interaction between Sri Chaitanya Dev and his eternal associates. No? And in this way, increase our identification as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, Rupanuga Gaudiya Vaishnavas, if you will, more specifically. And hopefully also as part of this series, we may increase our realization, insight regarding how Mahaprabhu is not different from Krishna. Because it's easy to say that Krishna is Mahaprabhu, Mahaprabhu is Krishna, but it's not so easy to realize that, to realize this bhed abhed. Because Mahaprabhu and Krishna are one, but also there is some difference, because if not, we wouldn't be speaking about Mahaprabhu and Krishna, Krishna Lila and Gaur Lila. So it's important to understand the abhed side, the non-difference, how Gaur and Krishna are one and the same, but also the Veda side, the different side, which speaks more about the bhav, the different moods in which they are in the Lila, basically. So something that we mentioned at the end of our previous series, if I'm not mistaken, but it's never enough to emphasize that, is that Gaur Lila is not only a bridge to Krishna Lila. Because sometimes I've seen devotees just thinking of Gaur Lila in terms of, okay, we go through Gaur Lila and we end up in Krishna Lila, and Gaur Lila is like discarded. No? So we are Krishna Lila, so Gaur Lila, thank you very much. But we can burn the bridge now. We cross the bridge, now we can burn the bridge. So we are on the other side. I mean, it's a way of putting that. I do not mean that everyone who thinks like that is being offensive towards Mahaprabhu or something. The point is that Gaur Lila is not only a bridge. Gaur Lila is also, we could call it a landing place. It has a life of its own. It's a goal in itself as well. It's a bridge, if you will. It's the entry gate towards Krishna Lila. But when you get to Krishna Lila, and as we'll see today, you go deeper into Krishna Lila, you find yourself in Gaur Lila again. So you realize, oh, this was not a bridge, if you will. It was a goal in itself. So, of course, we will be sharing some verses. In speaking about this, there are many verses which are quite well known. So today I may resort to some of the less well-known verses, but quite interesting ones, in connection to this nature of how Krishna Lila will take us to Gaur Lila, but also we can speak in terms of Gaur Lila taking us to Krishna Lila, like in cyclical terms. That's how Indians and Eastern people in general like to think in those terms, like in terms of cyclical conception. For example, a verse this is a well-known one by Prabodhananda Saraswati, which speaks about Gaur Lila taking us to Krishna Lila. Yatayata Gaura Padara Vindam Vindetha Bhaktin Krita Punya Rasi Tatatata Sarpati Hridya Kashmat Radha Padamboja Sudhamburasi. He's basically saying, the more you go deep into the service of the lotus feet of Sriman Mahaprabhu, the more you will find yourself engaged in the service of the lotus feet of Sri Radha in Vrindavan. So that's a way of saying, the more you go deep into Gaur Lila, the more you immerse yourself into Gaur Lila, you emerge on Krishna Lila. So there's place for that. And we can think in those terms. So Gaur Lila is taking us to Krishna Lila. But also there are other verses which say the other idea, the opposite, not opposite, but in the other dynamic. So especially two verses from Sri Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, which are part of some composition called Sarvabhauma Sataka, which there are 100 verses that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya composed in praise of Mahaprabhu after being converted. Two simultaneous translations. Wow. This reminds me 2 years ago in our retreat there, like 100 verse 17 and verse 18 Sarvabhauma Sataka. So Bhattacharya Sarvabhauma says, Chaitanya Charanambo Jai Jayasti Pritirachita Brindata Visayostasya Bhakti Syachata Janmane. One who develops firm love for the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya may have rendered service for 100 lifetimes unto Sri Radha and Krishna, who are the lower mysteries of love. So he presents the other side here. And for someone who is attracted to Mahaprabhu, that means that person must have been serving Radha and Krishna for lifetimes. Like a way of putting Mahaprabhu's service is like the mature fruit of worship. That's an interesting idea. And the next verse says something similar. Jatarada padam boje bhakti shat primalakshana tataiva Krishna chaitanya bhardate madhurarati. The amount of devotion one develops for the lotus feet of Sri Radha, bottom one increases in his devotion for the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya. Prabodhananda Saraswati said in the other way. The more you serve the feet of Mahaprabhu, the more you go there to Sri Radha. Here he's saying, the more you worship Sri Radha, you go to Mahaprabhu. No. It's not contradiction, but basically implying that they are true at the same time. And of course, this is also inviting us to develop a new thinking about these things, because sometimes we think the other way around and so on. So this starts to show actually one thing is the other, but from a particular different, let's say, emotional disposition. So yes, the more you go deep into Krishna Lila, into Lila, and vice versa, we could say the two things. There's no conflict. But in this case, regarding the last verses, this is the idea. You, Lila, or to the deepest, however you like to speak in terms of going higher or going deeper, is the same thing. You find yourself in Gaura. So this can happen to us here as sadhakas. To the so Navadvipa. For example, Nitya Navadvipa, he enters into Krishna, and all the associates are joining him there in their particular identity in Krishna. So in this way, one lila is taking us to the other, and the other lila is taking us to the other. But there is some place for thinking of Gaur Lila as again, this is not something that begins at one point and the other one comes from the other in chronological terms. But for example, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says in Chaitanya Charitamrita, interesting verse, Krishna Lila Mrita Sar Tarasata Satadar Dasa Dike Bahe Jaha Hoid Se Chaitanya Lila Tarvarakshay Manohamsa Charati Tahate. All nectar, Krishna Lila Amrita Sar. The essence of all nectar is Krishna Lila. Tarasata Satadar, and it is flowing in hundreds of directions and on branches in different directions. But does it have Jaha Baha Hoite from the inexhaustible lake? 20%, that's a unique idea. All Krishna Lila is an ocean of nectar flowing in many directions, but all of directions are coming from this fountainhead of Gaur. And they Sarabarakshoi Manohamsa Charati Dahate. Let's the Manohamsa, the swan of your mind, Sarabarakshoi, swim forever. Let them, the swan of your mind, in Gaur Lila. Shri Krishna Lila ki jai. So of course again this Siddhar Maharaj. So Krishna Lila come from Gaur Lila, come from Krishna Lila. He says, I mean, according to your affinity, none of them is coming from other in terms of a beginning in time. But according to words, affinity can have one inclination or the other. But again, the two are eternal. But there is place for special affinity one in another, in both at the same time. There is place for, I mean, we are individuals, so there is place for expressing our will. While emphasizing the non-difference between and Krishna Lila, you may know this analogy he said in his Shastakam column. He says, like, Gaur Lila symbol of the reversible. You know what's reversible jacket, right? The jacket is all black, and it has like an, how do you call this? Sleeves, yeah, whatever. Cuffs, sleeves, gold here, golden here, and there. Gold things are up and gold. But there are different, and of course for us color means emotion. Every or every color is sham corresponds with a Sringar Murtiman, the personification of romanticism. This color, if you will, is golden. It has to do with Radha's complexion and the highest magnanimity and so on. Basically, Gaur Lila is non-different from Krishna Lila, but even one thing in terms of Gaur Lila is the most natural extension of Krishna Lila. To reach new heights and limits, it becomes Gaur Lila. So it's the most natural. If you play out the implications of Krishna, what does it mean to be Krishna? If you play out implications, you have Mahaprabhu, you have Gaur Lila, you can without Lila. Gaur Lila is called Parishis Lila. So Chista is a word in Sanskrit which refers to an epilogue or like an appendix in a book. When you have a book and at the end is the epilogue. So this is kind of closing thing. It's like that Lila success, if you will. My Guru Maharaj. Without Gaur Krishna Lila is a failure because Krishna wants to taste Krishna Lila in Vrindavan, but at one point of the Leelas will see himself more well capable of things less necessary. So Lila stage for that Lila. So now to go on to the forest of Gaur, if you want to put it like that, or Lila Bhumi, the land of the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya. Which Navadvipa is considered as Gaur Lila is the most natural extension of Krishna Lila, then this Navadvipa is the most natural extension of Vrindavan, extended Vrindavan. When Vrindavan expands or go deep and reaches new heights, call it Navadvipa. Yeah. The what? So, Try. 1 second, please. Some technical issue here. We will switch to. Okay. What's the password? Oh my God. Okay. Okay, I think it's there. So, okay. Hopefully now it's working better. So let's continue regarding Navadvipa and Gaur Lila and natural extension of Vrindavan and so on. So again, for this we have to go to Vrindavan and we have to see how for Krishna there is some need. No? In Krishna Lila, Krishna is needy of a particular experience. For example, in the Rasa Lila, we know that Sri Krishna disappears from Rasa dance, and in separation, both Sri Radha and Sri Krishna are totally unfulfilled without one another. And it is mentioned in Shastra that Sri Radha in separation from Krishna, thinking about Krishna as being unfulfilled without her, because she knows, she has this particular psychology that she knows what will please Krishna the most, and she's let's say a fanatic of Krishna's pleasure. She only lives for that. So by just thinking how much pleasure Krishna needs, how much pleasure he has to be provided, and how much she could do that, but due to the circumstances of the Leela, she's not able to be there with him for that to happen. She cries so much by that thinking. To say in Vrindavan, there's one lake called Mansarovar, which is connected with this. It's a lake made of Sri Radha's tears, in this particular mood, basically. No? So, and sometimes she becomes so absorbed, so engrossed, if you will, in her beloved, in Sri Hari, that it say that sometimes even her luster, the hue of her body changes into Shyam Sundar's color. There are a few deities of Sri Radha that you will find like that. If you get the chance to visit Sri Jagannath Puri, there's one temple there, one of the main ones called Tota Gopinath. You may have heard about that one, where Mahaprabhu daily will hear Harikatha from Gadadhar Pandit. And then the deity, apart from Gopinath, from Krishna, the Radha deity is black. So generally you don't see black Radha. But there's one example of she herself being totally absorbed into thoughts of him to acquire, become like embraced by his luster. So, and also we have the opposite for sure. Now we have some deities of Krishna being white. Which one might say, why he's white? Some devotees even may complain, Krishna is not white. But actually, if you understand why he's white, then you will appreciate that's a higher Krishna, if you want to put it in. That Krishna absorbed in Sri Radha and acquiring her hue. So interestingly, we see that there is a famous pastime in this Rasa Lila, when Krishna is separated from Sri Radha, he sits in Imli Tala, one special place in Seva Kunja in Vrindavan. There's a famous tree there, and he sits in meditation and becomes absorbed in Sri Radha. You might have seen there's a painting of that, and he's no longer Shyam. He acquires Gauri, like golden luster, like her. So there we have a trailer of Gaur Lila in Krishna Lila. But again, before Krishna is turning the color of Sri Radha is turning black like Krishna's separation from him. So there we see how, like, the empathy, this word empathy is very important when we speak about Mahaprabhu, because empathy means, it's not so much like sympathy. Now, sympathy may be, oh, you are suffering, I sympathize with your suffering or something, but empathy has to do with, I'm totally in self-forgetfulness, and I'm totally absorbed in whatever you are experiencing. So that's, Mahaprabhu is that empathic form of divinity. So the point is that in Krishna Leelas, we know Sri Hari it is mostly witnessing the degree of loving absorption that Sri Radha presents, that he becomes overwhelmed trying to experience that, and that gives birth to Gaur Lila. He's witnessing the current of love that Sri Radha represents. Radha, the name Radha itself means, well, it comes of course from Aradhana, which has to do with worshipping, and the worshipper, the topmost worshipper. And of course here worshipper, we do not mean some ritual thing, very technical perfection in worship, but the most spontaneous type of loving worship, absorption. The name is saying Radha, if you repeat it a few times, it becomes Dhara. You just say Radha a few times. That's the trick that Krishna plays in the Leela with his parrot. He cannot pronounce Radha's name directly. Everything is the Leela is Parokshabad, which means indirect speech. And Krishna likes that very much. He says in the Bhagavatam, Paroksham Mama Chapriyam. I like everything which is indirect, everything that is crooked. Crooked? I mean, everything in Krishna is crooked. No, his form is not straight. It's Tribanga Lalita. He's crooked in three parts. Say his flute is not straight. There is some crookedness there. His stick, Gopa stick, is not straight. There is some crookedness. Everything is crooked. Parakya Bhav is crooked. It's not directly. I mean, we are married overtly, officially. It's a whole clandestine, underlying crooked stuff. Because again, crookedness gives more rasa. In the language of poetry, all the things are to be presented indirectly. Not directly. Directly is like not too tasty. So Krishna, as you know, he makes his parrot. You cannot say Radha directly in front of. So you recite this verse that I composed. He gives a long verse to the parrot that is impossible for a parrot to learn, but begins with the word Dhara. So the parrot tries to repeat and memorize the whole verse, not working. Krishna said, no problem. Just repeat the first word. That's okay. What's the first word? Dhara. So he starts saying Dhara, 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 Dhara. And Krishna said, oh, very nice. He gives some pomegranate seeds as like reward to the parrot. Okay. So Dhara means current. So and we can also connect the two syllables of the name Ra and Dha. So Ra can connect it with Raga or Anurag, which means deep affection. And Dha can be connected with the word Dhavati, which means to run very quickly. So Radha means to run very quickly with affection, with Anurag, in the direction of Krishna's pleasure. To run with lots of longing and intensity, passionate disposition of service. So she's always running towards Sri Krishna with greatest love. That's the ultimate meaning of Radha being the topmost worshiper, basically. And that's why she's called, again, Radha. She's flowing dhara, like a current, very quickly for Krishna's pleasure. So again, in the Rasa Lila, eventually we know the gopis start to sing Gopi Gita in separation from Krishna. Krishna is hiding behind the tamal tree, as we know, camouflaging there and witnessing all that is happening. And he made all this thinking, okay, in separation from me, the gopis will increase their love for me, because that's how it happens. I want the best for the gopis, so the best thing for them is that their love for me increases, so I will disappear. And the rest of the world will witness the integrity and the glory of their love by allowing all this to happen. So all those were the purposes of Krishna in his mind. But when he was witnessing that, a new purpose came, because he at one point started to witness how Radha's love for him was flourishing and flourishing in separation without end. It's like something that flourished and flourished inside and keeps flourishing. So Krishna became a new meaning to the whole thing came to him. Let's say, what must she be experiencing? And whatever she's experiencing is in connection to me. So I would like to taste what does it feel to be Radha. And I will get to know myself from a new perspective. No, I don't know me that much. I don't know what she Radha is experiencing, but for sure, whatever she's experiencing is in relation to me. So what is that special thing that she's seeing in me? I mean, I don't know that. I need to taste that. Because Krishna is Rasaraj, or Rasik Sekar. He's the king of relishers. That's his only business, basically, to taste rasa. So, and he finds also himself in a paradoxical situation, because he says in the Gita, I say, Yatamam prapadyanti tam stataiva bhajamyaham. According to how you worship me, I reciprocate. But he then finds the degree of the gopis' love and Radha in particular, it's such that I cannot fulfill my promise of the Gita. I have to contradict myself. No? I have to say, whatever I say in the Gita does not apply here in Vrindavan too much. That verse is, I cannot reciprocate with Sri Radha's love, because actually I want to taste whatever she's tasting. So then he says in the Bhagavatam, Pariyam nirabadya samjajam sadhu kritam vibhudayu sapiva jamavajan durjaragiha srinkala sambrishya tadva pratiyatu sadhuna. This is like the birth of Gaur Lila in the Bhagavatam. In the height of Rasa Lila, Krishna is saying to the gopis, I cannot repay my debt of love for you, even if I will try for a lifetime for Brahma. Try to imagine, it's pretty long time. And Krishna can try nice, hard, but he said, I don't find a way. So let your own love for me be its own reward, basically. I mean, I cannot give you a reward. Your own love for me is the reward. And it's such a reward that I want to taste that. It will be a reward for me. It's not only a reward for you, because I cannot give you something back. So your love for me is your own reward. I feel it will be my own reward if I was just had the chance of tasting that. Something like that. And Krishna is saying, I cannot pay my debt of love for you. I cannot even start to conceive how much is the debt. I cannot fathom how much do I have to pay. So what to speak of paying the debt? If you don't even know how much is the debt, I mean, you cannot even start to think in terms of paying. First, you need to conceive how much is the debt, and Krishna starts to count, and it's like, no, it's too overwhelming. This. So Krishna is not speaking cheap, flattering words here. He's really meaning what he's saying, and we will see he's really serious about that, because Gaur Lila is coming as an outcome of that. So in this moment, Krishna, who sometimes is called Ajita means unconquerable. So he leaves that name and he becomes Jita. Bhagavatam is saying that Ajita becomes Jita. Jaya Jita Priya Priya Jaya Sipra Transi Lok. What is the verse? Yeah. Yam Priya Sudhapasya Namantaiva Jivanti Sammukaritam Bhavadiya Bharatam Stanestitam Sutigatam Tanumar Manovir Ye Prayasu Jita Ajitopya Sitra Istilokim. So the one who is a Jita becomes Jita. The unconquerable becomes conquered by Swarup Shakti, by divine love, not by anything lower than that. So this is Krishna. This is the God we worship, a God who is conquered by love, a God who is worshiping something else. Prabhupada will say every religion teaches God is the ultimate worshipable object. We are teaching who is in God's altar, who God is worshiping. We are interested in that very intimate reach and insight, showing Krishna totally like conquered by the love of Sri Radha, fainting even by the impact of her love. That's one of the names of Krishna, Ananga, that's invoked in the Kam Gayatri. Ananga means, it's a name for Cupid also, means without anga, without bodily limbs, because Cupid is said to be invisible, but also it means without consciousness of one's own body, means fainting. So that's Krishna when he's pierced by the arrows of Sri Radha's sidelong glances. He loses all consciousness about himself. So he wants to know, what's this Radha Prem? So this is Gaur Lila. Gaur Lila Mahaprabhu is Krishna in the laboratory, basically, doing this experiment, trying to taste Radha Bhav, trying to attain his final PhD, basically. Now, he has pretty nice degrees in Krishna Lila, Braja Lila, but he has to attain, I think there is another degree above PhD, I cannot remember the name, but there is something, that one, his final upgrade. So Gaur Lila is that. And he will attain that, as we will see. And of course, he's eternally doing that. Because as I said before, when we see Krishna, generally Krishna is presented in a crooked way, Tribanga Lalita, which is like crooked in three parts of the body. And with his feet on the deities, generally it is shown that his knee, is crooked there because he's trying to touch Radha's skirt or something, and he's inclined in that direction always. So he has Radha on his left, so he's always leaning. His crookedness goes in some particular direction. It's not just any type of crookedness. It's a very accurate, specific crookedness. So he's bending to his left towards Sri Radha, and that means that, and Krishna's crookedness is in his heart also to begin with. His inclination is is in the direction of Sri Radha. He's biased, if you will, towards her. So the point is, okay, there it is. Do you follow my okay. So again, he's in that direction, inclined towards her, and at one point he inclines so much that again he wants to taste what she's about. So this longing is finally fulfilled, as we'll see in the figure of Sriman Mahaprabhu. And in that sense, we could say Mahaprabhu Gaur Sundar is Krishna in his ripe form. In the crookedness, he's towards Radha, trying to taste that. But as Mahaprabhu doesn't appear crooked. He's straight. Because he has fulfilled the purpose that Krishna had. Krishna was crooked, inclines towards Radha, trying to taste that. As Mahaprabhu, he's successful in that, so he's straight, showing the victory of Sri Radha, basically, Radha's prem. So sometimes, Krishna is known as Radhanath. You have heard that name, Radhanath. Radhanath means the master of Sri Radha, which kind of presents Krishna as the master. But for us Gaudias, we know it's not that much like that. And actually, ultimately, Krishna is more Radha Kinkara. Kinkara means servant. So he's a servant of Sri Radha ultimately. He's Dehi Pada Palavam Udaram, Sri Jayadev Goswami. Famous line when Krishna puts his head to the ground on the feet of Sri Radha, praying to her, please bless my head, putting your the dust of your lotus feet of my head on my head. And so here, as Mahaprabhu, he's confirming that Krishna comes and to sing that to the world and saying, like the famous verse, Hey Devi Krishna Mai Prokta Radhika Paradevata Sarva Lakshmi Mai Sarva Kanti Sanmohini Para. This is a verse from the Tantra, glorifying Radha with different names, but Mahaprabhu himself, Krishna himself as Gaur, is saying that. And one of the lines says, Radhika Paradevata. Sri Radha is my supreme goddess, my ultimate Ishtadev. So Krishna is saying that. Now Krishna is taking Sri Radha's again, he's worshiping her in his altar. That's the secret of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So therefore, Mahaprabhu sometimes is called Radha Vijay Murti. Radha Vijay Murti means the form Murti of Radha Vijay. Vijay means victory. So Radha Vijay means Radha's victory. The form of Radha's victory comes in the form of Mahaprabhu, because that personifies how love is conquering the absolute. And Krishna loves to be conquered. It's not that Krishna is, oh, I was defeated. No, I mean, it is say that if there is one quality in Krishna that is Krishna's favorite quality in himself, it's how much he's conquered by the love of his devotees. So if you were to make an interview with Krishna and say, what's the thing that likes the most about yourself? You know, how much I become a slave of my lovers. So that's the God we worship. No? Very unique conception. No? So again, as Mahaprabhu, again, Krishna is defeated, but in one sense, Krishna is successful in his project, because the whole project was to be defeated, if you will, to taste Radha's prem. So at the end of the Sikshastakam, this is stated when Krishna Das invokes the last verse at the end of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and say the last verse was spoken by Radha herself, which means Mahaprabhu, Krishna's Mahaprabhu, was able to fully taste Radha Bhav. But of course, immediately the question comes, but how much one can taste Radha Bhav fully? How much there is an end to that experience? Because actually Radha Bhav is a bottomless ocean. So that's why we have eternal Gaur Lila, Nitya Navadvipa. Now in Nitya Navadvipa, in the eternal Gaur Lila, we have Krishna's Mahaprabhu eternally tasting Radha Bhav, which has no end. No? Finding new and new heights or depths to that bottomless ocean. So that's why, and we are invited to enter into that eternal, without endless experiment, if you will, called Nitya Navadvipa. So again, as Mahaprabhu, Krishna is trying to taste Radha Bhav. That's the main reason for his appearance. And this is not such a cheap thing. You know, we may think, oh, Krishna can press a button and he's already doing that. No, it's not so easy, because Krishna is trying to imbibe the mood of Sri Radha, but this is not so easy for him, because in one sense they are separately, they are presented exactly different moods. No? Krishna is Adi Purusham, the supreme enjoyer, Vishaya Lambana, the object of all service. He's the center, everything is going to him. And Sri Radha is exactly the disposition of giving herself to him. Asraya Lambana, the vessel of love, sacrifice, dedication for the pleasure of Krishna. And Krishna is the one receiving the pleasure, if you will, Purusha. So now the supreme enjoyer has to take the role of, you follow my point, no? So this is not so easy, basically. It's like if you have a magnet and you want to change the poles, you say, it's not just like, oh, ready. No, it's not so easy. So it takes quite an effort for Krishna to change his natural disposition of being the enjoyer to enter into Sri Radha's shoes, if you will. No? So, and that takes sadhana. That's what we call sadhana. Sadhana means what? Like a very intense effort for invoking some internal transformation. That's what we call sadhana. So to fulfill his desires, Krishna has to become what's the name of someone who practiced sadhana? Okay. So in order to fulfill his innermost desire, Krishna, supreme enjoyer, appears as a sadhaka in the form of Mahaprabhu, as a devotee, as a practitioner. Because a sadhaka is expected to do sadhana. And sadhana, as I mentioned, is a very intense effort to invoke inner transformation. Don't forget that. That's what it means to be a sadhaka. Not just you are a card-carrying member of the Sampradaya. I was initiated, this is my name, I'm a sadhaka. I'm saved. I'm chanting some rounds and doing this. Oh, no need for more. You see the example of sadhaka that Mahaprabhu is given. So this is a very wonderful lila, no Gaur lila, because again, we have Krishna generally is the object of sadhana. No? All sadhana is pointing to him. He's the enjoyer and the one who takes the fruits and enjoys the fruits and results of the efforts of so many devotees. And now the object of all sadhana becomes a performer of sadhana, becomes a sadhaka. That's a very unique, like, shift, if you will. And generally, usually, the normal rule is like a sadhaka, by eventually after practice becomes a siddha. Siddha means like a perfected beings. And when attaining the goal of sadhana, when you perform sadhana, there is a goal in mind. Ideally, you have very clear in your mind which is your goal, because if not, your sadhana may be totally like for what you are doing sadhana, which is the goal of your sadhana. If you don't know what's the goal, probably you are not doing that much sadhana. I mean, even you do many things, if the goal is not clear for what you are doing those things, you follow. That's why when Mahaprabhu spoke with Ramananda Roy, we spoke about that last time, he said, speak to me about sadhya sadhana tattva. He said, speak to me about sadhya sadhana tattva. He didn't say sadhana sadhya tattva. He said sadhya sadhana. What is the goal and what's the practice to attain the goal? The highest one. And Ramananda Roy spoke about different levels of goals. And whenever he reached the top and Mahaprabhu put his hand on his mouth, you remember, okay, you reached the topmost goal. Then Mahaprabhu said, okay, now share the practice that will take us to that goal. But he made this point. First, we have to ascertain the goal. And then our practice, we will with that goal in mind. Because if you don't have a clue about the goal, your practice will be for which goal in mind, basically. So again, someone who embraces sadhana is to attain a particular siddhi or perfection, and the sadhaka becomes a siddha. So, but in this case, in Gaur Lila, we have Krishna, who is siddha, if you will, is perfect, siddha Krishna, becoming a sadhaka, like apparently going backwards, reversing the whole thing here, and becoming a disciple of Sri Radha, basically, and a student in the school of love of Sri Radha. Amisisha Gurunad Radhikar Premam Nath, says Krishna in Chaitanya Charitamrita. I'm a student in the school of Sri Radha, in the school of Prem of Sri Radha, and her love makes me dance, so many wonderful dances and so on. So that's in that places where Krishna, Siddha Krishna, finds its ultimate perfection in being a sadhaka and being a student. So do not underestimate your own opportunity of being a sadhaka, being a student. So as in that particular situation, Mahaprabhu, Krishna as Mahaprabhu, he attains further perfection. He's perfect. Om Purnamada Purnamidam. He's complete, but he attains the further perfection of the perfect, if you will. There's a way of using those terms. For example, Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and in other places depicts Krishna as Purna, Purnatara, and Purnatama. There is a Krishna in Dwarka is Purna, which means perfect or complete. Krishna in Mathura is Purnatara, which means more complete. He's always complete, but on the basis of being complete, he can become more. But he's always complete. So in Dwarka is complete, Mathura is more complete, Purnatara. And in Vrindavan, he is the most complete, Purnatama. But we Gaudias will say it doesn't stop there. It goes one further step. So Krishna, as Gaur Krishna, he becomes what we may call Purnatama Tama. He becomes like the most and of the most complete. Something. Again, the further perfection of the perfect. So that's a way of speaking about that. For example, Krishna is many times called in Shastra as Prabhu. Prabhu means like Lord or Master. That's not a low thing. Sometimes the devotees are speaking to me, Prabhu, oh Maharaj, excuse me so much. I'm sorry I called you Prabhu. And so like, yeah, you shouldn't have called me Prabhu, I told them, because Prabhu is way above higher than Maharaj or any title. Prabhu is a name for Bhagavan. So we should understand this. Even if someone calls you Prabhu and you accept that, you have to honor that name properly also. So Krishna is called Prabhu in Shastra in many places. But when Prabhu attains further perfection, how do we call Prabhu? Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu ki jai. So generally we don't call Krishna Prabhu, Mahaprabhu. You never heard about Krishna being Mahaprabhu in Vrindavan. Krishna is Mahaprabhu somewhere else. Gaur Lila. The greatest. Mahaprabhu means Lord. And Maha means great, the greatest Lord. The greatest form of Prabhu is Mahaprabhu, the ripe form of Krishna, if you will, the ultimate, most mature form. So Mahaprabhu, he's Mahaprabhu because he's Krishna experiencing the Mahabhav of Sri Radha. And as a result of that experience of Mahabhav, he's given Maha Mantra to the world, and therefore he's known as Mahavadanjaya, the most merciful aspect of the Absolute. So Maha, he's Mahaprabhu for sure. We have to call him like that. This is a very nice verse that is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prem Pradayati Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura-tattva Namaha. So this verse is presented when Rupa and Sanatan Goswamis meet Mahaprabhu and Prayag. So it's a very nice verse. Let me share some words about that because it speaks a lot about who Mahaprabhu is. So in this verse, Nam, Rupa, Guna, and Lila are included. Now these four departments are generally mentioned: name, form, qualities, and Lila. So Nam Mahavadanyaya, in other order. No? Mahavadanyaya means Mahaprabhu is the most merciful, most magnanimous form of that. That's his guna, his attribute. Namo is the beginning, which means I offer pranam to him. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prem Pradaya. So what's his lila? His lila is Krishna Prem Pradaya, to bestow bhakti. Bhakti is not inherent. I'm not saying that. Prem is not inherent. They say Krishna Prem Pradaya. Pradaya means to give. So if it's inherent, how can someone give it to you? I mean, someone is giving that. Mahaprabhu is giving. Krishna Prem Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura-tattva. I mean, Namam Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya. Krishna Chaitanya is his name. What's his name? Krishna Chaitanya. Gaura-tattva. Gaura-tattva is his rupa, his form, which is Gaura-tattva means has the hue, the golden hue. So again, Mahavadanyaya, to go for a minute, he's the most merciful aspect of Bhagavan. Why? Why? You tell me. That was what I was. You say he gives. You say he bestows bhakti, or prem, but he's given the highest form of that. And Greg added even to the lowest. So these 2 points make someone to deserve the title Mahavadanyaya. Because you can be Badanjaya, you can be magnanimous, but the most magnanimous means he who is given the highest thing even to the less deserving people. So we can give testimony of that. And of course, for fully understanding this, we have to understand what's the highest thing and who are the lowest. So it takes some time to really to really go back and say, oh, Mahavadanyaya, it makes full sense now. I fully understand. And of course, the most immediate thing, maybe instead of going, what's the highest thing, we can go, what's the lowest thing? And just take a look at, in my case, at least, I'm not saying your case, but who you are, where have you been before being touched by Mahaprabhu's grace? Because now we may not be the lowest. It can happen if we are not appreciating the gift, but by the grace of Mahaprabhu, we have been upgraded considerably. But before that, we have all the rights and good reason to label our, here I am, the lowest of the lowest. So, and again, when you understand that, you can really conceive oh my God, this is, as we always speak, costless. It's a costless gift. I do not deserve that, but still it's coming. So that's so merciful, so merciful. Krishna Das Kaviraj said, Jagai Madai Haitimoni se papista Purusharakita Haitimoni se lagista. Jagai Madai were Brahmins and they were so sinful, but they never committed Vaishnava aparad. And that's why they were redeemed by Nityananda Prabhu. But he will say, Krishna Das Kaviraj, in his humility, I am totally engaged in aparad. So I'm lower than Jagai Madai. Jagai Madai Haitimoni se papista. And I'm lower than the worm in the stool. That's another extreme description that he gives. And there's a whole story to illustrate that. I won't go there. It's too much. We will end at midnight today. So, of course, we have to go through these things without neurosis in a sustainable way. But there is a place for us to, in a healthy way, conclude, I'm the lowest. And of course, each one will think the same in a natural way, again. But at the same time, so much hope and so much grace is coming despite my lack of qualification. So that contrast becomes, I mean, it moves my heart too much. That's the point. Because if you don't feel lower, and this is not like forcing the idea, but realizing that, then you can really measure and embrace the full-fledged extension of this grace. No, so again, Mahaprabhu is giving this Krishna Prem to us in a very generous way. Audarya Lila, which means giving the Madhurya of Raj, giving the intimate love of Vrindavan in the totally undiscriminating way, basically. That's the very idea of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. You know what's the meaning of Gaudiya? Where the word Gaudiya is coming? I'm asking.
From the area where Gauda is.
Yeah. So Gaudiya comes from Gauda, sometimes called Gauda Desh, which is the area where Mahaprabhu was born, in brief. That's it. The general meaning. So someone may say it's weird to call your tradition Gaudiya Vaishnavism there, because it's like if you will say, I'm practicing Bulgarian Christianity, because Gaudiya will be a geographical term, and it's like it's limited to one area. I'm practicing South American Islam. It's like, what? Gaudiya. So there has to be another meaning to Gaudiya, which goes beyond the mere three-dimensional geography, and it has to do with the play of words. But the word Gauda, the Gaudiya will come from gur also. So gur is like, how do you say in English? Molasses, this type of sugar substance, because Bengal is a land of sweetness. There is lots of bamboo and sorry? Yeah, exactly. There are so many things that are made with sweet stuff. So the idea with this conception is, in this land, there is the gur, or the molasses of the sweetness, the madhurya of Vrindavan is there, but it's being given. That's the mood of Navadvipa, no? Audarya. Audarya means the bestowal of madhurya, basically. That's the name of Mahaprabhu, Prem Purushottam. He was experiencing a unique prem and distributing that to others, basically. Prema rasa niryasa koriti ashradan, raga bharaka bhakti loki koriti prachana. He's tasting the heights of prem rasa, and as a result of his own experience, he overflows in that, and that becomes his dispensation, his distribution to the world, raga bhakti. So that's the nature of Navadvipa. No, it's like sweetness predominated by magnanimity, Srila Sridhar Maharaj will say. Vrindavan is, there's magnanimity, but the predominated function is sweetness. There's the same thing, but in different proportions, if you will. It's the same lila again. It's the same place, Gaur, Krishna, Navadvipa, Vrindavan, but different proportions and dispositions, basically. So this verse that we mentioned, Nama Mahabhadanyaya, then Krishna Chaitanya Namne. The name is Krishna Chaitanya, which is Mahaprabhu's sannyas name, very unique name, as we know. We will speak about later. It's Mahaprabhu's sannyas. Which means Krishna consciousness, as you may imagine. Krishna Chaitanya. Chaitanya means consciousness. So Krishna, Srila Prabhupada named his movement Krishna consciousness. Another way of saying Sri Krishna Chaitanya. And of course, who is Krishna Chaitanya? Who is Krishna consciousness? Ultimately, Sri Radha. If there is Krishna consciousness somewhere, that's in her. So Mahaprabhu is in her mode. So that name is pretty appropriate, Krishna Chaitanya, which is not a typical sannyas name. So nobody speaks Harikatha like her, nobody is absorbing Krishna like her, and so on. And again, Gaura-tattva is this Mahaprabhu is Krishna coming with the luster of Sri Radha. And again, luster means color, and color means mood, emotion. So he's coming with the duty, Radha Bhava duty, Radha Bhav duty. No, Radha Bhav means in the mood of Sri Radha, and duty means with the luster of Sri Radha. So one thing is connected with the other. He has a particular inner mood, which reflects in a particular external presentation, if you will. And that's the main reason for Mahaprabhu's descent. So this main reason for Mahaprabhu's descent, again, because we can speak of Mahaprabhu, he came for establishing the Yuga Dharma, he's the Yuga Avatar, yes, but that's not the main reason. Main reason is tasting Radha Bhav. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami uniquely presents this in his Chaitanya Charitamrita, especially in his Mangala Charan, in the first 6 verses of his invocation. So give me some time, because I would like to to share some ideas regarding this, because in these days we will mostly resort to Chaitanya Charitamrita. So first I would like to share some words on Chaitanya Charitamrita and how important it's for us Gaudiyas, and then how analyze very briefly how Krishnadas Goswami's unfolding this idea of Mahaprabhu's descent in the first 6 verses of his Mangala Charan. My Guru Maharaj has exposed on that much more in detail in his book Sacred Preface. So to begin with, of course, Chaitanya Charitamrita is one of the main biographies of Mahaprabhu, sometimes called hagiographies, for not saying the main one, but that's not the only one. There are 7 main biographies of Mahaprabhu, actually, written in the old times, if you will. First, we have one called Krishna Chaitanya Charitamrita, the first one, who was written by Murari Gupta, with Hanuman in Gaur Lila. So Hanuman wrote the first one. So that's Krishna Chaitanya Charitamrita. Sometimes different names are there, but that's the main name. There's another one called Chaitanya Charitamrita Mahakavya, written by Kavi Karnapur. He's another associate of Mahaprabhu. As a baby, he was sucking one of the fingers of the feet of Mahaprabhu. That was his Sangha with Mahaprabhu, pretty substantial. Then it's the second biography written by Kavi Karnapur, Chaitanya Chandrodaya Nataka, which is more in the format of a play, like aesthetics and that particular elements. Then we have Chaitanya Bhagavat, which is quite well known for us, by Vrindavan Das Thakur. So we have more, 4, right? Then we have Chaitanya Manga by Lochan Das Thakur. Maybe you hear about that one. There is another Chaitanya Manga written by one Jayananda. And the 7th one is Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. So interestingly, and I'm saying that very briefly, we see in these 7 biographies, which of course came not in the same moment, but one after the other, but in a certain period of time, an unfolding of how they conceive and present Mahaprabhu in their particular books, finding the ultimate presentation in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So in the first, I won't mention each one of them, but in the first biographies, Mahaprabhu is more presented in like an incarnation of Vishnu, basically, like a Vishnu avatar in a Puranic sense, coming to destroy demons and establish the Dharma, more in that particular world order, no? New World Order or something. No? Then another biographies, Panchatattva appears on this scene, but Mahaprabhu still is more connected with the avatar principle, not so much as avatari, or what to speak of Krishna's PhD form or something. No. Some others, Mahaprabhu being depicted as an incarnation of Krishna, like somehow secondary to Krishna in that sense. In the second biography of Kavi Karnapur, a little bit the feminine side of Mahaprabhu is slightly presented, Sri Radha, but not fully emerged. Lord Chandas Thakur also speaks about like the Madhurya side of Mahaprabhu, but on some level. So finally, in Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami's Chaitanya Charitamrita, we find this, in the words of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, full-fledged or fully blown conception, more developed of who is Mahaprabhu, Krishna in the mood of Radha, coming mainly for that purpose, and so on. So my point is, Chaitanya Charitamrita is like the refined version of Mahaprabhu's life, if you will, go into the deepest reason for his descent. So Chaitanya Charitamrita, some brief words about Chaitanya Charitamrita before going to the Mangala Charan. So Chaitanya Charitamrita means, could mean many things, of course. Chaitanya is the name for Mahaprabhu. Charit means attributes, and Amrita means like nectarian. So the nectarian attributes of Mahaprabhu, which is, of course, perfect name. But also it can be translated, if we take Chaitanya's consciousness, because it means consciousness. So it means, and Amrita also means immortality. So, and Charit means, again, character or attribute. So Chaitanya Charitamrita could mean the character of consciousness in immortality. So Mahaprabhu is coming to show that. What's the ultimate attributes that consciousness can express in immortality? What's the ultimate potential of the jiva? Through his own example as a sadhaka, he's pointing to us, this is all that you can reach. Not exactly what Mahaprabhu is tasting, but as close as we can. So that's, in other words, again, the name of the book is saying, no, that the consciousness possesses character, possesses personality, possesses potential, and immortality is not only some like being freed from suffering, and that's all. Because Amrita means, again, non-death, but Amrita means also nectar. So there's positive attainment in immortality. It's not just getting rid of the negative influence, but embracing the positive, as my Guru Maharaj likes to say. Not only going from negative numbers to zero, but asking after zero, are there more numbers? Are there any positive numbers? So that's Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu taught people how to become immortal, but a particular notion of immortality. Again, not just transcend samsara, but with his own example showing what's the ultimate potential of the soul. And that's pretty ecstatic, as you may imagine. So also this Chaitanya Charitamrita is like the natural continuation of Srimad Bhagavatam. Gaur Leela is a natural extension of Krishna Leela. So Chaitanya Charitamrita is the natural continuation of Bhagavatam, as the Bhagavatam is the natural continuation of Gita. Gita ends saying, Sarva Dharmam Parityaja. That's the conclusion of the Gita. Abandon all sense of Dharma and surrender unto me. And that's where the Bhagavatam begins. Second verse, Dharma Parita Kaitavo. Reject all false sense of Dharma. So where the Gita concludes, Bhagavatam starts. And then after 18,000 verses, last verse of the Bhagavatam, says what? Nam Sankirtanam Jasya Sarva Papa Pranashanam Pranamodu Kosamanas Tan Namami Harim Param. Offer pranam to Sri Hari, whose congregational chanting of the holy names frees one from all sinful reactions and so on. So the last verse of the Bhagavatam starts saying Nam Sankirtanam. So it puts us at the feet of Mahaprabhu. The whole Bhagavatam concludes at the feet of Gaur Leela, basically. So Chaitanya Charitamrita picks from that and continues. There's a natural continuation. Srila Prabhupada will call Chaitanya Charitamrita like the postgraduate studies of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So there is some hierarchy in Shastra. It's not just, I will start with this because I like the cover of this book. No? Maybe not. Actually, when Srila Prabhupada went to the US, the very first classes he gave were on Chaitanya Charitamrita, because his natural taste there. But eventually in time he realized, oh, this is too much. The audience is not ready yet for this. So he measured the adhikar of hearers, and he realized, no, I will first deliver a more basic discourse, narrative, and gradually, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavata, and then we reach Chaitanya Charitamrita and so on. Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta says something similar. He said once that if all the books of the world will be destroyed, this type of examples, no? And only Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita remain, there is no loss for us Gaudians. And he continues it. And even if the Srimad Bhagavatam gets lost, but Chaitanya Charitamrita remain, there is no loss. Because the essence of the Bhagavatam, again, is found in Chaitanya Charitamrita. The essence of Krishna Lila is found in Gaur Lila. Because and something more, that's the point. Everything that is in the Bhagavatam is in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and something more. Some bonus track, you say in English? Some added feature. So this Chaitanya Charitamrita is like the only Goswami Grantha, or book written by the Goswamis, in this case Krishnadas Kaviraj, not one of the 6, but one of the 8 Goswamis. Sometimes there is that group. The only one written in Bengali, which is interesting because at that time Bengali was the language for the common people, while the books of the Goswamis were all written in Sanskrit, and Sanskrit was more the language of the educated class. So the point is, not everyone had access. This is a whole new lila. Namras is connected. This is because of you, Namras. You were the ones who bought me this microphone. And yes, it's increasing the quality of the presentation. Thank you so much. But some implications also there. So all the Goswami Grantha were written in Sanskrit, so not everyone had access to them, basically. So Chaitanya Charitamrita is all the essence of the books of the Goswamis, but in a language that is accessible to everyone. And at the same time, presenting the highest reach of the Goswami Grantha, if you will. So that's a very interesting thing, because as we know, the Goswamis never wrote about Mahaprabhu overtly. I mean, they wrote some things here and there, some astakams, some prayers, but they did not enter into full details of that. But as my Guru Maharaj likes to say, the Goswamis wrote about Radha and Krishna in such a way that the reader will naturally at one point ask, where is Mahaprabhu? That's a very important point. If you properly study the books of the Goswamis, they wrote about Vrindavan and Krishna in such a way that it naturally takes you into asking, there has to be a Gaur Lila. If not, this Krishna Lila is not complete. The Goswamis were expert in doing that. Indirectly, they spoke about Mahaprabhu very deeply. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami complemented that by speaking about in a more bold, direct way. So in this Chaitanya Charitamrita, we find how, in the words of my Guru Maharaj, how Rupa Goswami saw and understood Mahaprabhu. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami show us that picture, how Mahaprabhu is seen through the lens of the Goswamis, especially Srila Rupa Goswami. And also there's a quite detailed description of some leelas that were not present in previous biographies. For example, Chaitanya Bhagavat, which is the second for us most important biography, I would say, and Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita is constantly referring to Chaitanya Bhagavat. But in Chaitanya Bhagavat, there is something very nice, very charming imperfection, if you will, because the author, Krishna Vrindavan Das Thakur, he's a devotee of Sri Nityananda. He's totally into Sri Nityananda. You can feel that from page 1. So but in the beginning of the book, he gives a summary of, I will be speaking about all these throughout my book. So there you have like the index, if you will, table of contents. But as the book progresses, at one point he starts to go deeper and deeper and deeper into the glories of Srinitai, who is his Istadev. And he gets lost there. Lost and found, as they say. And the book ends there. So you may say, but in the beginning you say that you were going to speak about you didn't do that. You may say that's an imperfection, but which was the cause of that imperfection? His total absorption in Bhav, in Nityananda. So that's not imperfect. So the point is, in that way, Vrindavan Das didn't describe in detail certain leelas of Mahaprabhu. So Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami is complementing that and entering in more detail about those leelas which Vrindavan Das mentioned briefly or did not even mention at all because of getting lost in an ocean of Nityananda's Bhav. So it is said that in that way, and Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami himself describes in his book, the devotees came to him asking him, please expand on these leelas that Vrindavan Das did not speak about. So he went to Vrindavan, long story, but basically in Vrindavan, he went to the deity of Madan Mohan, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, asking blessings for such a task, such a challenging service. And in that moment, the garland from Madan Mohan fell in Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, which was quite a mystical confirmation, like begin Chaitanya Charitamrita. So that's when he started to write his book, full of humility. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the description of the pastimes of Mahaprabhu from his birth and so on begins in the 13th chapter of Adi Lila. As you know, Chaitanya Charitamrita is divided in Adi Lila, Madhya Lila, and Antya Lila. So the Adi Lila, which is the initial portion, you may think, okay, the first chapter starts with Mahaprabhu's birth and so on. No, that happens in chapter 13. So before that, there's a whole preparation of the stage and the explanation of the Mangala Charan. Mangala Charan is the auspicious invocation of the book, which happens in the first verses, but then the next chapters are an elaboration of that Mangala Charan. So in the first 12 chapters of the book. We won't go through those 12 chapters. We will go next class straight to Mahaprabhu's birth. But today I wanted to concentrate a little bit, as I mentioned, on the Mangala Charan, the first 6 verses only, mostly, in which Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami unfolds gradually who Mahaprabhu is and why he actually descended. So if you have some minutes, I will try to share with you some words about the first 6 verses of Mangala Charan of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Maybe you are not prepared and you don't have the verses with yourself. Maybe you are not prepared, you don't have learned them by heart yet, but you can, there's time. But if you want to look, if not, I will share them with you, but just in case you may like to have and read them, no problem. So I will recite each of them and briefly explain, but it's nice to see how in these first 6 verses, gradually more and more, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami is like revealing who Mahaprabhu is and why he came to us, no? Like to make full circle with what we were speaking in the beginning of the class and then put our discourse to rest today. So the first verse of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 1, verse 1, Chaitanya Charitamrita 1:1 says, Bande Gurun Isha Bhaktam Isham Avtarakam Tat Prakasam Chatak Shakti Krishna Chaitanya Samyakam. So, of course, to begin with, the first 2 words, Bande Gurun. Krishna Das Kaviraj said, I offer Bandanam, Pranam, obeisances unto the gurus, unto my spiritual masters. He's not saying unto my guru, and there's only one guru, and he's the best, and he's my guru, something like that. Sometimes we hear that, unfortunately. No, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami is not that type of person. He's showing in context. I mean, if you don't get these first 2 words, you won't get the whole rest of the book. So there's a plurality of gurus. There's not only one guru and that's mine or something. So he's showing that by saying Gurun. Gurun is plural. It's not guru, which is singular. So he's saying, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the spiritual masters. No? Eventually want to enter a land of gurus. Srila Siddhar Maharaj will say, what to speak of thinking in terms of many gurus. A land of gurus where the land itself is a guru. So basically in this verse, he's offering pranam in a very brief way to the Pancha-tattva and to the principle of Guru. Bande Gurum Isha Bhaktam, which means to the devotees of the Lord, of Isha. Isham Ishavatarakam, to the avataram, to the divine descents of Bhagavan. Tat Prakashan, Prakashan means to the expansions or plenary portions of Bhagavan. And the Chatak Shakti, and to the Shaktis of Bhagavan. Swarup Shakti, Tatastha Shakti. And of course, as you may imagine, all this is personified in the Pancha-tattva. Swarup Shakti, Gadadhar Pandit, Tatastha Shakti, Srivas Pandit, Avatar, Advaita Acharya, Prakash, Nityananda Prabhu. And Bhagavan, and the end says, Krishna Chaitanya Samyakam. And I offer pranam to Bhagavan himself, Krishna Chaitanya, who comes in the mood of the devotee. So this is the first verse of Chaitanya Charitamrita, no? And of the Mangala Charan. The Mangala Charan is made of 3 ingredients: Namaskar, Vastu Nirdesh, and Ashirvad. So Namaskar is one verse or more than one verse, in which the author offers Namaskar, Namaste, Namaskar, for pranam to the deities of the book, if you will. So in the first verse, this first verse is Namaskar Sloka, and the second verse we also be Namaskar Sloka, where Krishna Das Kaviraj offer pranam to the deities of the book. So this is a pranam, general pranam mantra. Here, as you can see, he's not mentioning anything about Mahaprabhu is Krishna in the mood of Radha. He's not saying that. He's saying unto Mahaprabhu, who is Bhagavan. So a general idea, Mahaprabhu is God. We are not against that, but we have to begin somewhere. So let's go to the second verse, which is again Namaskar Sloka, a second Namaskar Sloka, in which Krishna Das Kaviraj will be more specific in his pranam, and he will offer obeisances to Sri Gaur Nityananda. Bande Sri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Saharito Godadai Pushpabantu Chitra Sangotamonudo. This is a very nice verse. My Guru Maharaj likes it a lot. So he offered pranam to Bande, sorry, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda. So Sri Gaur Nityananda ki jai. Sahadito Godadai Pushpabantu Chitra Sangotamonudo. It is a where like the sun and the moon. Mahaprabhu compared like the sun, and Nityananda Prabhu like this soothing moon. A lot to say on the man of this, but I'll make it brief. Appearing simultaneously on the horizon of Gauda-desh of Bengal. So of course, you never see that the sun and the moon are appearing at the same time. If that will happen, you will say like, this is totally extraordinary. So that's the idea of Krishna Das Kaviraj, this is totally extraordinary. They are like if the sun and the moon will appear at the same time, this is unbelievable, but that's happening. Chitra Sangdo Tamonudo. And they have arisen to dissipate the darkness of tamas, of ignorance, and Chitra Sangdo, and to bestow a wonderful benediction upon all. So there is start to be some glimpse about what Mahaprabhu is about. But he's not saying yet what's the wonderful benediction they are coming to give. But he's like gradually presenting the whole thing. Like if you want to say something very special, and you will like, in installments, you will like this, but this and this. So he's doing that very expertly here. So this again, a second Namaskar Sloka, offering pranam to Gaur Nityananda, the Samasti Gurus of our Sampradaya, the macrocosmic Gurus. Again, nothing directly about Mahaprabhu being in Radha Bhav Krishna, but they come to bestow a wonderful benediction upon all, which of course we know that will be in connection with Mahaprabhu's own experience and Nityananda Prabhu delivering that like totally in an indiscriminate way. So Yeah, basically that, I will say. I mean, there are lots of things to say about each of these mantras. I'm suffering a lot of anxiety, not being able to say more, but time is here. We are still on the time frame. So, so let's go to the third verse, because my main point is in sharing this verse is to show how the presentation of Mahaprabhu's reason for descending is being unfolded here. So third verse, we go now to the another ingredient of the Mangala Charan. We have the Namaskar Sloka first too. Now we go to the Bastunirdesh Sloka. Bastunirdesh Sloka is a verse that, how to say, that points to the essence of the what the book is about. Basically, this is what the book is about. This is the object of the book. So Jadat Baitam Brahma Panishadi Tadapi Yasya Tanubha Ya Atmantaryami Purushaiti Swasyam Sabhibaba Sada Ishvarya Purnas Jaiha Bhagavan Satsaya Maham Na Chaitanya Krishna Jagati Paratatvam Paramiha. All these are very nice verses, and all are invited to learn them. So these are very nice verses. Bastunirdesh again. So Jadat Baitam Brahma Panishadi Tadapyasya Tanuba. He's saying, he's unfolding, he's saying the first line, that what the Upanishad describes as the impersonal Brahman is but the effulgence of his body. No, he's not saying who he's speaking about. He's saying he who the Upanishad speak about, the Upanishad speak about Brahman, no? The Brahma Jyoti. Okay, that is his effulgence. Then second line, Ja Atmantaryami Purusha Iti Sasyam Sabhibhava. Paramatma, this localized, all-pervasive form in the heart of it, is his plenary portion expansion. So he's going to this Brahman, Paramatman, Bhagavan, and connecting them with, as we will see, of course, Mahaprabhu. He's not saying Mahaprabhu yet, but he's like creating the moment. And then he says, Sada Ishvarya Purnam Yaiha Bhagavan Satsaya Maham. So he who is Sada Ishvarya Purna, which means full of 6 opulences, which is another form of saying Bhagavan. Bhagavan means he who has these 6 opulences: beauty, fame, strength, renunciation, and so on. So he who is Bhagavan, he is Bhagavan. And he said, Bhagavan Swayam Ayam. Swayam Bhagavan. When we say Swayam Bhagavan, because we can say Bhagavan Baraha, Bhagavan Ram, Bhagavan Nrsimha. There are so many Bhagavan. But we go this when we refer to Krishna in Vrindavan, we call him Swayam Bhagavan. Like the Bhagavatam say, Krishna's to Bhagavan Swayam. In the words of Prabhupada, Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, or the ultimate form of divinity. So here, Krishna say, okay, that Brahman is him. His effulgence, not him, his effulgence. Paramatma is his plenary expansion. Sada Ishvarya Purna Jaya Bhagavan Satsaya Maham. Yes, he's Bhagavan, he's Swayam Bhagavan. And last line says, Na Chaitanya Krishna Jagati Paratatvam Paramiha. So he's saying, actually, this Krishna Chaitanya is all this. I mean, in Sanskrit it works like that. It's difficult to explain now, but in Sanskrit, many of these verses, it describes something, but just in the last line or last words, you get to know what that something is speaking about. So you are reading first line, second line, third line, you are on the edge of your seat. Who is this about? Who is this speaking? So last line, and it makes all sense and full circle. So this last line saying, this Mahaprabhu, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, I'm referring to on Paratatvam Paramiha. He said, there's no higher truth than him. So after saying Brahman is his effulgence, Paramatma his plenary expansion, and yes, he's also Bhagavan Krishna, at the same time he said, there's no higher truth than him, like implying we could say he's higher than Krishna. Of course, he's Krishna. So be careful of falling into this dichotomy, higher, lower, worse. But he's Krishna, but in this unique form. Then in another verse, we will see maybe later, Krishna Kaviraj refers to Mahaprabhu as Para-tattva Simha. Para-tattva Simha means limit. So the highest limit of Para-tattva, of the supreme truth, the highest reach of the supreme truth, Mahaprabhu is saying. So this is similar here. So this is the Bastunir Sloka, the verse which presents what the book is about, this Krishna Chaitanya. Again, in this verse, it is not said Mahaprabhu is Krishna and Radha Bhav and so on. But he's saying Mahaprabhu somehow is Krishna in a higher disposition, in the most perfect, as we say, Purnattama Tama. So he's connected with Bhagavan, Brahman, Paramatma, Swayam Bhagavan. Krishna is above Narayan. That's a big section of Chaitanya Charitamrita also. But again, no truth is higher or equal than him. So he's given the glimpse. Why no truth is higher than Mahaprabhu? Of course, because of what he's tasting. But that's not mentioned yet. But gradually, this is being unfolded. So now let's go to verse 4. 3 more verses. You can survive? Yeah. Anarpita charim chirat kadanayavatirna kalo samarpaitum unnatoch palarasan sabhakti shriyam hari purata sundara dhyuti kadamba sandipita sadahridaye kandaresh purato bhas sachinandana. So this is another well-known verse. This is the third ingredient of the Mangala Charan, which is Asirbad. Asirbad means blessing. So one ingredient of Mangala Charan is the author is giving blessings to the reader. Like presenting the fruit of reading the work will result in a certain benediction. So what's the benediction that Krishna Das Kaviraj is invoking for us? He said, may that Krishna Chaitanya, who is known as Sachinandan, important name of Mahaprabhu, the son of Sachi, be transcendentally situated. Oh, okay, let's go. I'm just read the translation. Let's go with the order in Sanskrit. It's more exciting because all that comes at the last line, as you know. Says Anarpita charim chirat karunayavatirna kalo. Anarpita charim, that thing that we has not been bestowed. Anarpita. Arpita means to offer. Arpanam. Arpita. Anarpita means not offered for a long time. Karuna Yavatirna Kalo. In this Kali, Karuna Avatar, Karuna Avatirna, he descended in a very merciful disposition. And the second line, Samarpaitum Unatoj Balarasan Sabhaktishriyam. That thing that which was not bestowed, Anarpita, Samarpita, is fully bestowed now in this Kali Yuga. And what's that thing? Unnata Ujbalarasan Sabhaktishriyam. There's many things to say about this, but basically means this Mahaprabhu is giving his own bhakti, his own experience of Radha Bhav. Unnata Ujvala Rasa means Ujvala Rasa means Madhurya Rasa. Unnata Ujvala Rasa means a particular unique type of Madhurya Rasa, which in this case is generally connected to the experience of Manjari Bhav, which is what the jivas can taste in connection, the closest to what Mahaprabhu is tasting in Radha Bhav. Hari Purata Sundara Dhyuti Kadamba Sandipita. Here it is saying he came with the luster, resplendent with the luster of molten gold. So again, he starts to share the secret gradually. He came with this particular color, and he came also to bestow the thing that for Sadahridaye Kandaresh Purato Vasachinandana. The blessing comes at the end. Sada means constantly. Hridaye Kandare, in the cave of your heart. Spurato means manifest. Vasachinandana. This made this Sachinandan be manifest in the cave of your heart constantly, forever. So that's the blessing that Krishna is giving to the reader. Now, if you read Chaitanya Charitamrita properly, that Mahaprabhu will. Sachinandan also, Hari is the word, Hari is here. Hari also means lion. So the idea is, may that lion roar in the cave of your heart. But of course, for meeting the lion, you have to go in the cave of your heart. Sometimes we are not that willing to enter the cave. So we have to be willing to enter the cave. So this verse again is, actually this verse is written by Srila Rupa Goswami, interestingly. And there are some verses that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is taking from other authors. This is one of them, from the Vidagdha Madhava of Rupa Goswami. Is the Namaskar Sloka in Rupa Goswami's book. Here is the Asirvad Sloka. So again, here Krishnadas Kaviraj or Rupa Goswami, Krishnadas here, by quoting it, is showing something more about Mahaprabhu. He came to give something that was not given for a long time, which is this extension of the experience of Sri Radha, Manjari Bab, Babulas, Rati. Again, he's not saying here, Mahaprabhu came in to taste Radha Bab yet, but he's making it more and more evident, basically. But he's saying he came with the luster of molten gold. So again, that speaks of Radha Bab, but without saying that yet. He will say that, but not yet. So gradually. So eventually, all these verses that I'm quoting, Krishnadas Kaviraj will explain them in the succeeding the following chapters. The different next chapters are explanations of each verse. So you can imagine there's lots to unpack from each verse. There's whole chapters that he's dedicating to them. So in one way, we will see, no? In chapter 3, he explains this verse, Krishnadas Kaviraj, and he connects the explanation with the external reason for Mahaprabhu's descent, which is distribution of Braja Bhakti through Nam Sankirtan. And when we analyze this external reason for his descent, that's already, you are about to faint because it's too much. And that's only the external reason. So what to speak about the internal reason? So gradually he's taking us there. So that's the fourth verse. Let's go to the fifth, two more verses. Now it becomes more obvious. Fifth verse. Radha Krishna Pranay Kritil Ladini Shakti Rasmat Tikatmano Api Bhuvi Puradeha Vedangatoto Chaitanyakyam Prakatam Tadunat Aduna Tatvayam Chaikyam Aptam Radha Bhava Dyuti Suvalitam Nomi Krishna Sarupam. So this verse and the next one, 5 and 6, are like an extension of the Mangala Charan, because the three elements of Mangala Charan are already described. So what does this verse say? Radha Krishna Pranay Vikritir Ladini Shakti Rasman. So he's saying the loving interaction between Radha and Krishna are a transformation of Ladini Shakti, of the pleasure potency of Bhagavan, one of the three ingredients of the Swarup Shakti. In other words, it's something divine, something transcendental. This is not something mundane. Loving interaction between Radha and Krishna. Then he says, Ekatmano api bhuvi pura deha vedam gatoto. Actually, Radha and Krishna are one. They are not two separate people. There's no duality in Radha and Krishna. They are one in their identity, but at one point, again, it's not about time, but it's his praises in that they separated themselves and the one became two. The non-dual absolute, for the purpose of rasa and loving interactions, express itself in the form of Shakti and Shaktiman, energetic source and energy, Radha and Krishna. Again, it's one person, it's one soul in two bodies. That's Radha and Krishna. One heart, one soul, but taking two forms, basically. So these two, this one, Eka Atmano, became two. So, and these two now became one again in the form of Sri Chaitanya Dev. So basically he's saying that Chaitanyakyam Prakatam Adunat Tadvayam Chaikyam Aptam. Dvayam, the two, Cha Aikyam, Eka, became one. And the last line, he offered pranam to Mahaprabhu. He said, Radha Bhava Dyuti Suvalitam Nomi Krishna Swarupan. He said, I offer pranam to Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna, Krishna Swarupam, Radha Bhava Dyuti Suvalitam. But who is coming in Radha Bhav, in the mood of Radha, And also Radha Dyuti, Subalitam. Subalitam is adorned, like ornamented with her bhava and her duty, with her mood and her luster. So again, this is much more clear than the previous verses. He's saying Mahaprabhu is Krishna in the mood of Radha, in the bhava of Radha, with the luster of Radha. He didn't say that before. He's saying that because sometimes you say Mahaprabhu is Radha and Krishna combined in one way, because in another way, Mahaprabhu is Krishna in the mood of Radha. But Radha in Gaur Lila is Gadadhar Pandit, which is another series of lectures altogether. Sorry again?
The battery is that.
Okay. Yeah, it connected immediately to the other one. Okay, so they here telling me that the battery of the cell phone is falling. So now we will go back to the other connection, which may be a little interrupted, but we're almost finishing. So give me some minutes. So again, Rasaraj, Mahabab, Dui, Ekarup. They are two by becoming one. So Mahaprabhu, sometimes the name Mahaprabhu could be connected to Mahabhav, Shri Radha. She's Mahabhav Swarupini, the personification of great ecstasy. And Prabhu, as we know, is who? Krishna. So Rasaraj Sri Krishna is Prabhu and Mahabhav Swarupini Shri Radha. You put together Maha and Prabhu, you have Mahaprabhu, Krishna in the mode of Radha. So there are other people called Mahaprabhu in other sampradayas, Balabhacharya and some others, but the meaning of Mahaprabhu, as we are explaining, that only can be connected with Sri Chaitanya Dev. So again, Radha and Krishna are one in Tattva, they are one, they are the absolute, but in Bhava, they are two. For the purpose of Bhava, it's one soul in two Bhava bodies, in Bhava Dehas, two spiritual ecstatic bodies getting together. And again, becoming one in certain way in the form of Sri Chaitanya Dev. So again, one could say, okay, so everything was revealed, but still it seems so, but one could say, no, still it is not clearly mentioned. Okay, Mahaprabhu is Krishna in Radha Bhav, but why? Why in Radha Bhav? Why he came in Radha? What's the reason for him to be in that particular mood? So the last verse that we will share today, the 6th verse of the Mangala Charan, then Krishna Das Kaviraj will present the reason for Krishna appearing as Mahaprabhu in Radha Bhav. So we see this gradual unfolding. He's creating the building momentum. So let's go to the 6th verse when the 3 famous main reasons for Krishna appearing as Mahaprabhu were mentioned. Sri Radhaya Pranaya Mahima Kridisho Banaya Iva Swadyo Janat Bhuta Madhurima Kidrisho Bamadya Sokyam Chasya Madana Anubhavatha Kidrisham Beti Lubat Tad Bhavadhya Samajani Sachi Garba Sindhu Harindu. So here the 3 reasons, internal reasons for Krishna appearing as Mahaprabhu are finally revealed. Finally. So which are these 3 reasons? First, desiring to understand the glory of Sri Radha's love. Krishna wants to understand the glory, the pranaya mahima, in the words of Krishna Das here. Radha, actually, yeah, this is the verse of Krishna Das. The previous verse was written by Sarup Damodar. I forgot to mention. So wanting to understand Radhaya Pranaya Mahima, which is the Mahima or the glories of Sri Radha's Pranaya. Pranaya means love in general terms. So first reason, understanding the glories of Radha's love. Second, Swadhya Jenat Bhutta Madhurima, which are the wonderful Adbhut qualities that she relishes through that love. What is she, Krishna is asking, what is she relishing in connection to me through the love she has for me? She's finding some unique things in me, so it seems I'm special, Krishna says, because I can see how Radha reacts to that. But what's that? Which are those things that she finds in me? I don't know. I need to be on that side of the equation. So that's the second one. Which are the qualities that she relishes in him. And third, Sokyam Chasyamad Anubhavata, which is the happiness, basically, that she feels what she relishes, that love. So which are the glories of her love? For me, Krishna asks, what's that thing that she perceives in me? What's the happiness that she derives from such perception, basically? So then the last line concludes very nicely saying, Tat bhavadya samajani sachi garba sindhu harindu. So in this way, this says, this Supreme Hari, Krishna's Mahaprabhu, Gaur Hari, richly, completely endowed with the emotions of Sri Radha, Sachi Garba Sindhu Harindu. He was born from the womb of Sachi, as the moon appeared from the ocean. Like you see the ocean and it seems that the moon is being born from there. So this is a comparison, poetic analogy. Mahaprabhu is like the moon, Gaur Chandra, being born from the womb from the ocean of Sachi's affection, basically. No? So finally in this verse, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami is revealing that thing that makes Krishna to appear again in the mood of Radha. This antakarana means the internal reasons for his appearance. And of course, that's the main reason for Gaur Lila. Without these three reasons, no Gaur Lila. Take out all this, no Gaur Lila, no Sankirtan Lila, no nothing. So again, this is a very unique conception, because here we can see that, as my Guru Maharaj likes to point, God is theologizing about himself. Generally, theology means, does God exist or not? And let's speak about that. But here we see God himself questioning himself about his own position, who I am. In the words of my Guru Maharaj, Mahaprabhu is Krishna in existential crisis. Who I am. I thought I was God, and I thought I had the greatest capacity for tasting, but I'm seeing that Sri Radha is tasting something that is unknown to me. So am I God or I'm not God? What's going on? So trying to solve this existential crisis, Krishna adopts the form of Mahaprabhu, enters into psychoanalysis, if you will. Krishna trying to understand himself. That's another level of theology. God himself doing theology regarding himself. So why I am who I am, basically. We ask that question ourselves. Who I am? Krishna, God is doing that same question from his particular side. So again, counts as Mahaprabhu try that particular environment. Sometimes the example is given of an orchestra director that he has some capacity. About his capacity, he will see himself doing things by being influenced, and his own potential is reaching new heights by the grace of that particular environment. So somehow Radha Preman reaching new heights, Prabhu becoming Uttama. And in this way, Mahaprabhu reaching the perfection of his long, because again, Krishna was greedy for Radha Bhav. He had some greed. Maharaj one. Do you have some 10 minutes? We are already almost 2 hours, so 5-10 minutes. No more than 10 minutes. Sri Gaur Govinda Maharaj gave this nice analogy once about the greed of the Supreme in different forms and different ages. So since Satya Yuga, Bhagavan, so who is the father of a mother of Nishrim? Krishna is called Jashodananda Nandananda. How do we call him in that sense? Who is his father?
Nobody.
A pillar. We don't call him Stamba Nandana. Stamba means pillar, but he has no father or mother in the Leela. So then when Prahlad Maharaj, we know prayers, and she had this offering blessed one, eventually Prahlad said, please bless my father, and so on. So Nrsimha say, oh, how charming this experience he has for his father. I don't know what's that about. I don't have a father. My father is a column, pillar. So he say, in order to taste, so Nrsimhadev becomes greedy to taste Vatsalya. Say, from now on, in every form I will appear, I will always have mother and father to taste that. So he has that greed as Nrsimhadev in Satya Yuga. Then he appears in Treta Yuga as Ramachandra. And of course, he has Kausalya, Dasarat, are their father, mother. So that's in place. So then Ramachandra, as you know, at one point he's traveling in the Dandakaranya, in the forest of Dandaka. And there are some sages that approach him and tell him, oh, Sri Ram, we would like to serve Surya Bhav. We have that affinity. We want to assist you in romantic love. But Ramachandra says, oh, but I'm coming here as a king and I have to perform the duties of a perfect ruler. So among those ingredients, I accepted Ekapatni Brat, which means the vow of only having one wife, Sita Devi. So in this appearance, I cannot fulfill that. But I would like to fulfill that. So again, a new level of greed comes in the absolute. So in my next appearance, I won't have that limitation of only one wife. So you can imagine which is that next appearance. In Dwapara Yuga, he appears as Swayam Bhagavan Sri Krishna. No limit. He has not only unlimited wives, affairs, with the gopis of Raj. He has wives outside of Raj, 1,108 wives, has lots of lovers, and so that's satisfied in Krishna Lila. But again, in Krishna Lila, as we have seen today, at one point Krishna develops this new level of greed. I want to taste Radha Bhav. So that greed takes him to appear in Kali Yuga's Sriman Mahaprabhu. So in this way, Mahaprabhu represents the perfection of the greed of the Supreme, basically. So in this way, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami finishes this 6th verse of the Mangala Charan, saying, due to these 3 reasons that we mentioned, internal reasons, Mahaprabhu, fully endowed with Sri Radha's emotions, appeared from the womb. Finally was born from the womb of Sachi Devi as the moon appeared from the ocean. So, of course, and the moon, Mahaprabhu is the moon. It's not only moon, it's a full moon, as we know. He appeared on that day, Purnim. His appearance day is called Gaur Purnim, appearing as Radha and Krishna combined. Krishna appeared on half moon, Astami. Radha appeared on half moon, Astami, Janmastami, Radhastami. You put the 2 half moons together, you have full moon. Radha and Krishna combined, Mahaprabhu, you have Purnim, Gaur Purnim. That's Mahaprabhu Sri Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Nahi Anya, Rupa Noga Janira Jivana, says Prabhupada Bhakti Siddhanta. Mahaprabhu Sri Chaitanya, Radha and Krishna combined in a particular way, as we explained. And to speak about that, Rupa Noga Janira Jivana, that's the life and soul of the Rupa Noga Vaishnavas. So we aspire to become Rupa Noga Vaishnavas, and that's why we are trying to make these discussions our life and soul. And in this way, in Gaur Purnim, in Purnim, Gaur appeared from the womb of Sachi Devi. So we are left at that point, and tomorrow in our next session, we will start speaking about Gaur Purnim, of the birth of Mahaprabhu and all the unfolding of his Leelas in Navadvipa. So I will stop here. And if there are any questions, tomorrow morning also we have a Q&A Stagosti session, so we can entertain there tomorrow. So thank you so much for your and to all of them connected online as well. Shriman Mahaprabhu ki naam sankirtan ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanand ki Gaur, Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Hari Gaur.